I always believed that we had a free will. Now I'm not so sure anymore. I mean, when you were a JW, I'm sure you were told this many, many times that God gave people free will. That's what makes us different than animals. Animals don't have a free will. They just have an instinct, and they're basically acting upon pain and pleasure that they experience. And if there's something feels good, they do it. And if something feels bad, then they try to avoid it. But they can't sit down and attach certain meanings to situations, and they cannot make decisions just like we do. We can actually tell ourselves, okay, I want to do this and I don't want to do that. Although another person will say exactly the opposite thing, even though they experience similar things. So, question is, do we have a free will? Think about it. We very often say that, okay, we as Jehovah's Witnesses, we're baptized as Jehovah's Witnesses out of our own choice. Because nobody pushed us into the swimming pool. Some people say, well, I was just a kid. Fine, you were just a kid maybe when you were baptized, but not every Jehovah's Witness that was baptized was just a kid. There are people who joined at any age, in their 50s, 60s, 70s. And they join and they're getting baptized at any age. Besides, people who remain as Jehovah's Witnesses in their adult years, they didn't make that decision to be a Jehovah's Witness only one time when they were getting baptized. They made the decision to remain as a witness way into their adult years. And when they were asked, are you a Jehovah's Witness? They identify as one. So did I. So we can't say that, oh, it was just a one-time decision because of our peer pressure or because of expectations of our parents or something like this, because we continued to be witnesses for a very long time until our consciousness, our awareness, our knowledge changed. And then we're like, oh boy, I don't want to be part of this organization anymore because I found out new things. But the decision that we have made back then were the best decisions that we could have made. Think about it. If we had the knowledge that we have today and there was a button to take us back in time, would we make the same decisions? Chances are we wouldn't. But if you didn't have the knowledge that you have today and you went back in time and you went back to the knowledge that you had back then, you would make exactly the same decisions and you would make the same mistakes. Why? We're looking often at Jehovah's Witnesses, and I heard this so many times, that they have a mind like robots, that you can present to them evidence. There is black and white. There it's very simple, and they don't get it. They just say, whatever the governing body says, we have to follow. And in their own life, they're making decisions and choices for the decisions based on what the governing body allows them to do or not allow them to do, whether they can shave beards or wear skirts or report hours of their service. Those are the things that they do and follow because that's what it's being expected of them. But if you ask them, they will all tell you that they are volunteers and they're doing this out of their own will. Truth is, when we were there, that's how we felt. We felt like whatever is that we're doing it out of our own will. But when we're looking at them right now, we're thinking, no, these people are programmed and they're replying and responding and deciding things in their life based on the program that was run by somebody who programmed their mind. But our mind always is getting programmed constantly. Every time you watch TV, it's getting programmed by media. Every time you listen to your teacher at school, it was programmed by your teacher. Every time you listen to your parents or copy your peer group, you're always getting programmed by somebody else. Now, they're saying that when you're born, you're also born with certain fears, with certain even abilities and skills that you copied from your parents and your grandparents. I know this just by looking at my own children and how certain mannerisms, certain way of speaking, certain jokes even, or the way they act very often resembles my parents or somebody in my family. Certain things we're thinking, oh, I created something. I just created something new. And then we realize, oh, no, you didn't create anything new. And this has been going on for a long time. is just you discovered something that was already happening. We're thinking that, oh, we have a new thought, new idea, just to realize that a lot of people already thought of that before. They did this experiment to see to what extent our subconscious mind is running our conscious mind. And they basically hook up the electrodes to our brain, and they ask people to bend their finger at will. So whenever they feel like, whenever they want to, if they choose to, they can bend their finger. And they would watch the screen. And here's what they watched. They realized that half a second before somebody bent their finger, a subconscious mind sent a signal saying, you should do this. Now, the conscious mind, after started, so we're thinking it's our choice to bend the finger at this moment, and yet it was the subconscious mind that sent the signal for us to do so. See, the more we dig into this subject, the more we realize how important this subject really is. Why? Because a free will, if it does exist, it's intertwined with responsibility. So let me give you an example. Let's say there is a car in your driveway. You're looking out the window, and it's completely smashed. Your car was completely demolished. Like the windows are broken. Every single side is scratched, and you're just furious. And you're thinking, whoever did this, I'm just going to call the cops, I'll put him in prison, I'll beat him up. Like somebody's got to be held responsible for this damage. And you go outside and you see that it was a deer with antlers, big antlers, and scratch the crap out of your car. Would you react the same way, knowing that it was a deer, an animal, versus a human? And you might say, well, no, because animals don't have a free will. They don't think. They can't help it. They just react. They have an instinct. And this deer would break my car, and I would just go shoo, 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 go back to the forest. I would not put it in jail. I wouldn't call the cops on a deer. I would not punish somebody who has no free will. Fine. Then you find out, oh, this was not a deer. This was a person, and the person scratched up your car, damaged your car. Then you're a lot more angrier because you're thinking that person did this on purpose. But then you learn that this person is mentally ill and they can't help it. They don't control their own actions. They just respond to whatever the brain sends us impulse, and all of a sudden they're angry and they're thinking that your car is a monster, and they're imagining things, and they scratched it up and smashed it. Would you put that person in jail? I very much doubt it. We tend to help these people because we realize they can't help it. They're not consciously thinking about the actions. But when you talk to them, guess what? They can think about some things rationally. To some things they can't. What about people who are indoctrinated? What about people who were taught to believe something and they actually believe it? It's very maybe obvious to us that this type of behavior is wrong, but for them it's all right. See, when they asked terrorists, people who would kill others for religious reasons, they would ask, why did you kill this person? They would say, this person was an apostate. And in Muslim religion, we believe that people go to hell. And this apostate not only is going to hell, but he's bringing people out of Islam, and whoever will refuse Islam will end up in hell. Therefore, by killing this one apostate, we're going to save a whole bunch of people who will eventually end up in hell. We're saving souls. See, he thinks he's doing something good. Every Jehovah's Witness would follow almost the same example. They don't physically kill people, but they spiritually kill them by saying, this person is an apostate. Do not talk to them. Cut them off right away. People feel like, oh, you know what? My family member died. They're spiritually dead to you. That's how they say. And you know what? We did this too. When we were JWs, we shunned people. Somebody was disfellowship. The moment we heard this announcement, that's it. Maybe we cut them off on the phone. We didn't want to find out why. We didn't ask why. We were just programmed, indoctrinated to behave this way. And everybody said, well, it's our choice, our will. But truthfully, we were programmed to think this way, even though we believed we had a free will. See, can you hold it? Can you hold them accountable for it? Can you say, oh, these people were evil? These people are evil for shining. And yet we were shining. Were we evil when we were shining? Very often I hear, oh, Jehovah's Witnesses, they're big liars. Were you lying when you were going door to door and spreading things that you believed in that today you don't believe in? To what extent do we actually have a free will? To what extent we can say, you know what, I'm making this as my choice? When all the studies have shown that what we do today, how we act, what decisions we've made, is simply a reaction to things that happened in the past. Our personality is shaped up to the age of 6. 6. Imagine you're born with already certain things that were given to you through genes, through your parents. And then to the age of 6, when your brain is basically like a sponge, learning everything around, and you're acting and you're doing something, and then you fall down, for example, and then your parents are looking at you, and maybe your mother would pick you up. It's like, oh, poor baby, right? And she cuddles you and she loves you. And that created certain connections in your brain. Certain neurons started connecting, and you're like, oh, you know what? If I'm hurt, then I get love. And guess what some people do? They create drama in their life. They're looking for problems because that's how they get love. That's how they connection. That's how people feel empathy towards them. And this is how they find friendships. Another person would fall down in exactly the same way, and everybody in the room is laughing. And the guy's like, oh, if I fall down, I make people happy, and everybody's happy. And then guess what? I'm gonna go and make myself fall off the couch, and I'm gonna fall on the pillow, and I'm gonna go upside down. I'm gonna do a whole bunch of things. And a clown is born because this is how he connected things in his brain, and this is why he wants to do this more and more. But another person would say a joke or something funny in his head, and everybody went like, oh no, this is stupid. Made fun of them, whatever. And then they started connecting in their brain, oh, if I'm trying to be funny, it's going to be embarrassing. So they never try to be funny. They'll never say a joke in their life. Maybe they did this when they were 4, and they're now 47, and it's still running in their brain. So we're thinking, we want to make this decision. We want to go this way. We want to go that way. But truthfully, the reason why we want something is because something already happened in our past that caused us to feel good towards one way and bad towards another. To what extent can we say that we chose the life that we have, that we chose what good is and what bad is in our life? If we were living in a different time, for example, if today you might think, oh, you know what? Slavery is bad. It's immoral. It's wrong to have slaves, to own people as property, sell them, buy them, inherit them. It's wrong to force people into labor for your own benefit. But maybe if you lived hundreds or thousands years ago, you would be fine for you to have slaves. Maybe that was normal back then, and maybe you would have slaves. Maybe you would be a slave. Maybe you would be writing things like Apostle Paul would write, slaves, obey your masters, like to the Lord. Maybe you would be fine and acceptable for you to have slaves because everybody else has them, because it was acceptable back then. There were countless examples of people who were really good, moral people who never hurt anybody in their life. And then they were wrongfully accused of a crime. And they end up in jail. And in jail, with the environment of criminals, Their way of thinking started shifting, started changing. They left jail, and guess what? They're totally different people. They became criminal. Some people do, some people don't. To what extent can we hold other people accountable? Now, here's the two sides of the story. If there is no free will, if we're just responding to what took place, how our brain is getting wired, and how we're reacting to things that already took place, and how our brain interpreted events that took in the past, then there is no accountability. Then we're just no different than animals. Maybe we have certain awareness more, greater knowledge, but if there is no free will, then how can you actually throw somebody in jail when that person didn't have a better way of reasoning, better way of understanding this world or actions? I never forget this, when a guy that I really thought he was like the best person in a congregation, he was so well behaved. He was a kid a little bit younger than me. We were growing up together in the same congregation. He was like the most behaved kid on the planet. And then he grew, of course, very nice family, very respectful, very active. You would never think anything bad about them. And then this kid grew up, got married, and then his wife comes to the elders and says, "My husband beat me up." And they called him for the conversation. And they asked him, "Why would you do this?" And then he says, "My father did this almost daily. That's normal. That's how you treat your wife if she's talking back to you. That's how you keep her subordinate to you. You're the head, and she's supposed to be in subjection to you. How am I supposed to teach her to be in subjection to me if she's talking back to me? My father did this almost every week." In his brain, this is how you resolve the issues. In his brain, those were the connections that were done. And if there is a problem, this is how you solve it. Was there a better choice for him? Think about it. I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm very curious about what you will say about this subject. Put it in your comments. What do you really think about this? Because I myself have made many, many mistakes, including raising my own children, simply because I was not raised properly, at least not that I think of it. So I was beaten when I was a kid for even little things that I have done. And then later on, guess what? When I had my kids, I was spanking them. Not as severe as I was spanked, but I started spanking them. And then later on, somebody showed me a better way. Like, no, you don't hit kids. No, you don't spank them. You have to find a better way. I'm like, better way? Like, this is like, how do you explain to a little kid what's good or bad? You got to give them a little, on the tushy. And they're like, no, there are better ways. And because they showed me a better way, then I'm like, oh, maybe this method of raising children is not appropriate. But until actually somebody pointed it out to me, until somebody taught me a better way, I would have been doing the same mistake like my parents did. To what extent do we have a free will? I think free will doesn't really exist because we can will ourselves to something. I think there are choices. I think there are decisions that we can make. And the more we learn, the more we expand our knowledge, the more we experience things, the more choices we have. See, this is why when you're not educated, you think you know it all. Because you have very little paths in your brain. In your brain, there's a right and left, right? Like when you're in a cult, you think you know it all because there's only two roads. You're either with us or you're against us. There is nothing else. But when you leave this mindset, you realize there is almost unlimited paths in life, and every single one has some good and bad and ugly. And the more you learn, the more you realize how little you actually know. The less you know, the more you think you know. So the question is for you, what do you think? Does a free will really exist? To what extent should we hold people responsible when they're making decisions only based on what they know and what they feel is right. And just because we outgrew certain mindset, that doesn't mean that somebody else did. And it's incredible how intelligent people are presented with exactly the same evidence. Exactly the same. And one person will see, this makes sense to me, this convinces me. And another one will say, no, this evidence does not convince me. It's not enough for me to be convinced. What determines that our brain accepts a belief or not? Some people are very gullible, some people are not. Some people are extremely skeptical, some people are not. Some people are what we call them mismatchers. Whatever you told them, they're going to go the opposite. It's incredible. That's how the brain is wired. Is it up to them? They didn't choose this brain, they didn't make it that way. I'm watching my kids. We feed them the same way, to the same parents, they're raised in the same household, with the same values, with the same beliefs, with the same training, the same food. And they're totally two opposites in almost everything you can possibly imagine. Totally two opposites. Different personalities, totally different way of making decisions in almost everything they do. One has totally different passions, another one has totally different interests. One will just go and do whatever you throw at her, she will go and do it. The other one just goes the opposite direction. Why? Why? Is it predetermined? Some people think that everything is predetermined and everything happens the way it's supposed to happen, and you cannot happen any other way because it happened the way it did. On the other hand, we want to feel that we are in control of our life, and we want to make decisions, and we want to be responsible for those decisions. After all, if I have an apple or banana, I want to say I have a free will and I chose to eat banana over apple. Nobody made me. My subconscious mind didn't make me to make that choice. I made that choice. But if you made that choice, then so did monkey. Monkey can make that choice. Does that mean that the monkey has a free will? Or was it your subconscious mind attaching more pleasure towards eating banana and less pleasure towards eating an apple? Therefore, you chose to eat banana because your subconscious mind attached more neurons towards pleasure. There's dopamine in your brain saying, if I eat this banana, I will have more pleasure than if I eat an apple. And you're thinking that was your choice, while the amount of the dopamine that happened in your brain with the attachment to this decision actually decided for you. Now, taking this to the context of Jehovah's Witnesses, think about it. Can you actually hold them responsible for what they're saying and then they're doing? Because I think of myself, not about all the Jehovah's Witnesses. I think about myself, how I reacted, what I did when my best friend told me about, the girls that he was sleeping with. And I was indoctrinated that that is like the most evil thing. And if I don't tell the elders, then his sin will come unto me and I will die at Armageddon. And I couldn't sleep at night. And I told him, you have to go report yourself to the elders. If you don't go within 1 week, I will go and I will tell them. So you must go. It's better if you go. He goes, he gets this fellowship. I'm shunning him. 2 guys on the job site, me and him. And guess what? I'm not talking to him. And I was proud of that. I was proud of it because I felt like I'm doing the right thing. I'm helping him to return to Jehovah. I'm helping him to realize what he did was wrong. And he felt so much pain during that time. He quit his job, and I remember he was extremely depressed. And I felt back then, now I feel like it was horrible what I have done. But back then I felt good. I actually felt I was doing something good because Jehovah, whoever he loves, he will discipline. And I felt like, oh yeah, this guy needs discipline so he won't make that mistake again. That was my belief. Those were my values. That's how my mind was programmed into believing. Now, I left. I believe something different now. I have different beliefs and values. I would not make the decision today, but I'm making the decision today about other things. And then maybe a decade from now, I'm going to look back on today thinking, What the hell was I thinking? I was indoctrinated and I was blinded and I was inexperienced. We're watching this and thinking about our younger selves. And sometimes, like, oh man, I did really crazy stuff in my life. But if I didn't do this crazy stuff, then I wouldn't get wiser. I wouldn't get new options in life. I wouldn't experience the pain of making that mistakes, and I wouldn't learn the lesson that the mistake came with. So, how much is this up to us? How much of this is a free will? Can you make yourself love somebody? Can you make yourself believe into something? Can you make yourself believe in a God that you never heard of? Can you make yourself love Jesus or Moses or Allah or Muhammad? Can you make yourself feel a certain way? I'm not sure you can. I'm not sure you can. And I don't think you can actually convince yourself of anything. I think your brain convinces you of whether something is right or not based on the evidence that you're exposed to. And for some people, that is enough. And for some people, it's not. It's extraordinary. And the mystery of the mind is extraordinary. I'm very curious what you guys think about this. Because the more I dive into this, the harder it is for me to say there is a free will. But if there is no free will, then I know what you're thinking, Jack. Then we could just explain all the things that are happening, and we would not punish anybody. The punishment wouldn't make sense, because if somebody murders somebody, are you gonna tell me that he couldn't possibly stop it? That it was not his choice? That he couldn't make any better decision because his neurons were firing off, and he many times I felt like hurting somebody, but I didn't act on it because somebody got me really angry or frustrated. But then again, why didn't I fight? Why somebody else couldn't hold their anger and started fist fighting while another person would not? Is it because of they were programmed differently? See, we still punish people and we still isolate people because they're creating danger to others. We also realize that if we do punish people, then they experience pain, and when they experience pain, they learn. They don't want to do it again. So if you're driving like a maniac on the highway, you get a ticket, you're like, I gotta pay this, or your license gets suspended, or whatever it is. You experience pain for your behavior, and then later on, you don't want to behave that way again. It's just like training a dog, right? Like you train a dog by rewarding him for what he's doing right and giving him a little treat, and then a dopamine hits, and then he's following that command. And then if you use a stick on the dog and then you tell him, oh, don't use this, and smack him in the butt for doing something wrong, he will also learn. Is it possible that our mind is simply programmed into making decisions that way? See, if we were born with a free will, we didn't really have a choice but to have a free will. Is it possible that we program our mind as we go, and our consciousness constantly expands, our growth constantly expands, and as we're growing in life, we realize we have more and more options of how to make those decisions. Before, maybe we had 2 or 3, and now we have 200 or 300. And this is how our consciousness expands, and it will always expand. We're always growing. But then with that knowledge, you're going to look at other people with more empathy, because you realize, okay, I outgrew this mindset. Now I have more choices in life. But looking back at others, I don't feel that it would be right for me to say that they are evil, because it's very easy to judge somebody else based on the consciousness that you have, because it's also the experience and the choices that you have made. but the other person didn't have your experience. They didn't have the choices that you have made. They didn't have the punishments and the pain and whatever experience that you were exposed to. They had a different experience. So a man would beat up his wife because he watched his mother being beaten. And in his mind, he's like, that's what you do. That's what he was taught. Those are the connections in his brain. While somebody else didn't have those connections because they never experienced it, they never saw this. That's not how you resolve problems. See? It's very, very challenging, but at the same time, not only we can have more empathy towards others and less judgment towards them, but at the same time, we realize what really works is education. What really works is spreading the awareness, expanding the consciousness so people have more choices. So when you're looking at somebody who's really angry and the way they deal with anger, maybe it's through physical violence, maybe we can just show them, hey, there is a better way. And you might think, it's not me, I'm not violent. Did you spank your kids? I did. Not proud of it, but guess what? I didn't know any better. That's what was happening in my life, and that's what was happening in my parents' life and the parents of my parents. It was normal. And when we were frustrated and angry, you're like, okay, come, do something wrong, whatever, we give you a smack in the bottom. That was normal. And today I've learned something new. I expanded my knowledge. I saw somebody and they showed me how to discipline the child. And yeah, to be honest, I was amazed to see how they handled a situation where I would react totally different, but they reacted in a much more mature way, and new pathways in my brain started growing, and like, oh, this is 100 times better way. It's more effective. It requires more patience, that's for sure, and self-control, but it's more effective. But unless you're taught this, then you don't have those choices. And when I'm looking at Jehovah's Witnesses, I'm looking at how I made those mistakes prior to this. Do they have those choices? Can they make those choices? See, very often people will say, oh, maybe the average Jehovah's Witness, maybe they're not lying because they actually believe, going door to door. We believed it too. But the governing body, I mean, they're for sure, they're big liars. In order for somebody to become a governing body member, they have to go through all the layers of Jehovah's Witnesses. They have to become an elder. Most of them, they have to be pioneers or missionaries, circuit officers, and then they get to that level. Which one out of all the people, all the witnesses that you have ever known at any of those levels, you felt like they're liars? They're just pure evil liars. When I read Crisis of Conscience and I read about Raymond France, who was there for 9 years, he believed it. He didn't feel like he was lying to people. He admitted that even though the evidence were pointing out against 1914 and 607 BCE as the destruction of Jerusalem, and he saw it with his own eyes, and he read the articles, and he was looking for something that would actually prove that 607 was the year of destruction of Jerusalem. He couldn't find any, and he found countless examples of the date that contradicted this. He still wrote articles proving, or not proving, wrote articles that supported the theory of 607. Because that's what he believed. That was his biased opinion. And we have a whole bunch of biases in our life. It took him a long time to get out. Even when he got out of the Bethel, he still wanted to remain as a witness that disfellowshipped him, but he didn't want to leave. So, looking at the current governing body, are they really lying, or are they really deceived? Are they really programmed into believing this? See, when you're attached to your identity as they do, they believe that there are guardians of doctrine. This is how Jeffrey Jackson identified governing body in the Royal Commission, Australian Royal Commission interview. If they're guardians of doctrine and that's their identity, then even if something disagrees with the doctrine, they are there to guard it. They're not there to change it. They're not to make it better. They're there to guard it. And if you are a guardian, then what? Then your mind is closed. You go to any guardian, you go to a police officer and you point out flaws in the law. Is he going to agree with you, or is he going to guard the law? He's going to guard the law. He might personally disagree with it, but he's still going to guard it. Believe me, they will. Same with a soldier. So, to what extent do we have it? To what extent can we say, hey, you know what? These people are big liars. I'm curious what you're going to say. Because I don't know. I'm not convinced one way or the other. I don't know if we have a free will. Maybe we don't. So you tell me, what do you believe? Do you think we have a free will or we don't? Curious about your response. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.